The events of September 11th, 2001 will never be forgotten. They changed our country. They changed the world. Millions of Americans and others across the globe watched in disbelief as a tragedy unlike anything they had ever known before unfolded on live television before their very eyes. The magnitude of the disaster was unprecedented, unimaginable. It was so sudden, so violent, the devastation so complete, that an exact figure on the loss of life is difficult to determine. The estimates, though, are staggering. Over 4,590 people, most of them civilian, lost their life on that day. Thousands more were critically wounded and hospitalized. Husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, co-workers. It is impossible to number all who were affected or to measure the impact these terrorist attacks will have on the world's future. The terrorist attacks of September 11th turned America's skies and two of our most respected landmarks into literal war zones. Never in the history of the United States have so many civilians perished in a single coordinated attack. Rarely, if ever, has the face of the world changed so much in so short a time. The attacks of September 11th were acts of terrorism intended to destabilize and undermine the American way of life. It was not, however, the first time in recent years that American interests had been attacked. In 1993, the World Trade Center was rocked when a car bomb exploded in an underground parking garage. In 1998, the American embassies in Kenya and Tanzania were leveled in a coordinated terrorist attack. In 2000, the USS Cole sustained heavy damage and casualties when rammed by a boat filled with explosives in Yemen. Unfortunately, these and other attempts to terrorize America failed to awaken our sense of vulnerability. In many countries, anti-terrorist measures such as security checkpoints, rigid airport security, and heightened police and military presence are commonplace. But America had yet to adopt the strict security measures seen in other parts of our world. In fact, the hijackers didn't even violate a single regulation when they carried box cutters and knives onto the airplanes they boarded on September 11th. Knife blades up to 4 inches long were allowed. The terrorists recognized America's vulnerabilities and exploited them. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the skies over New York, indeed over the entire New England seaboard, were crystal clear. Boston's Logan International Airport. Passengers prepare to board American Airlines Flight 11 bound for Los Angeles. Included in the passenger manifest are 5 men later identified as hijackers. With 92 on board, Flight 11 departs Boston. Newark, New Jersey. United Airlines Flight 93 is boarding passengers bound for San Francisco. Flight 93 has 45 people on board, including 4 hijackers. Washington Dulles Airport. American Airlines Flight 77 boards 64 people headed for Los Angeles, including 5 men with a different destination in mind. Finally, back at Boston's Logan International, United Airlines Flight 175 prepares for an 8:14 departure for Los Angeles. Again, 5 hijackers are among the 65 passengers and crew. Shortly after 8 a.m., all 4 planes are in the air. At around 8:27, the 2 flights out of Logan International, American Flight 11 and United Flight 175, suddenly change course, turning south from their westerly flight paths. At 8:45 a.m., the unthinkable happens. American Airlines Flight 11 slams into the North Tower of the World Trade Center between the 80th and 85th floors. Confusion and panic grip those inside. The impact is felt throughout the North Tower and even by those in the South Tower. I was on the 59th floor of Building 2 when all of a sudden I heard a large whooshing noise that no one knew what it was about, but we ran and we went to the window. We saw Building 1 was on fire. Soon people can be seen jumping from the upper floors of the North Tower to escape the flames, fumes, and smoke. Plus I saw people jump from like about the 90th floor from the outside. Very hard to say. A lot of people escaped, though. On the ground, people scatter to avoid the falling debris. Emergency personnel immediately respond to the disaster, completely unaware of its magnitude. Images of the burning building are broadcast worldwide on live television. Little is known about what has just happened, and speculation runs rampant as the minutes tick by.
And we heard this great big loud sound, and I said, thunder. And then my daughter said, no, Mama, it's not thunder. That was an explosion.
Since few people actually saw the first airliner strike the North Tower, theories over what had happened were varied. Some suspected a terrorist bomb planted within the tower, while others talked of an accidental plane crash. At 9:03, all speculation ends, and people's worst fears are confirmed. Millions, riveted to their TV sets, watch in horror as another airliner, United Airlines Flight 175, crashes into the South Tower of the World Trade Center.
I'm sorry I screamed. That's on purpose, Alfred. Somebody's doing this on purpose. Oh my goodness.
Flaming debris again rains down on onlookers and rescue workers. The aircraft that the terrorists chose as their weapons that day in New York were Boeing 767s. These planes had a wingspan of 156 feet and were fully loaded with over 20,000 gallons of fuel in anticipation of their planned coast-to-coast flights. It has been estimated that the force contained in the impact and subsequent explosion and fire from each of the planes is equal to as much as 1/20th of the power contained in the atomic bomb dropped in Hiroshima in World War II. Each of the World Trade Center towers sat on 1 acre and rose over 1,360 feet straight up. This gave each of the 110 stories 43,200 square feet of floor space. These two towers, which had dominated the skyline of New York since their completion in 1973, had just received their death sentence. In the area around the World Trade Center, some people linger in order to watch the events unfold. Some offer assistance in whatever ways they can. Emergency personnel encourage people to leave the area as rescuers work to evacuate the buildings. No longer could this be considered an accident, and the fact that it was a well-coordinated attack became clear. What was still unclear is if it was over or just beginning. Radio and television stations worldwide interrupt their normal programming in order to carry live information about the terrorist attacks. Many are injured while trying to escape by debris and flaming wreckage falling to the street. For those trapped on the upper floors of the towers, there is little chance of escape. Several eyewitness and first-hand accounts speak in haunting terms of the many who jumped from the towers that day to avoid the inevitable death they would otherwise have suffered when overcome by the fire and smoke on the upper floors of the towers.
Made us evacuate right away, and so it was very quick. Within probably about 2 minutes, we were on from the 59th floor to the 44th floor, and then we hit the stairs all the way down. About the 20th floor is when they thought it would be okay to announce we can go back since it's only affecting Building 1. All of a sudden, Building 2 shook.
Suddenly, there was a sudden shaking of the building. I ran to the inside of the office, and that's when I knew something was wrong. I saw one of my traders was lying on the floor, burned from head to toe.
All the debris was falling into the street, like falling onto cars. The cars were hitting each other.
Calls were coming in, people wanting to find out if we were okay. And then finally the fire wardens reached our floor and helped us to evacuate.
I saw a man's body going over the roof of the building on the side of us, and I said, that's a man's body.
Simultaneously, a third plane is being hijacked. Shortly after the crash of Flight 175 into the South Tower of the World Trade Center, American Airlines Flight 77, bound for Los Angeles, makes an abrupt course change of its own. 40 minutes later, at approximately 9:43 a.m., it crashes into the Pentagon. At the Pentagon, there was virtually no warning for those inside that they were about to become a part of the attacks on America. As people inside were watching coverage of the events in New York unfold, a sudden impact rocks their building. Suddenly, they are the ones frantically trying to escape the flames and smoke. Across the entire 6.5 million square feet of the Pentagon, people feel the explosion and are knocked to the ground. One Pentagon employee recalled seeing a huge ball of fire coming toward her and engulfing her. She, like many of her fellow Pentagon workers, would come to amidst devastation, wreckage, flames, and smoke. For many, the only escape came from crawling through burning embers or stumbling through smoke-filled hallways. Co-workers came to each other's aid in the next few moments, and workmates became saviors as they put out flaming hair and clothes on friends and colleagues. People helped one another make their way out of the wreckage. Emergency personnel and fellow Pentagon employees rush to the scene to help and are met with a sight many never dreamed they would see. The Pentagon, the nerve center of the most powerful military force the world has ever known, had been successfully targeted and attacked in complete surprise, leaving a gaping, burning hole in one side. The Arlington Fire Department, Fairfax Fire Department, Federal Emergency Management, FBI, Secret Service, and military personnel all respond to the scene at the Pentagon. Amid the confusion over who was in charge, many brave men and women stepped up and focused on helping the victims. Reports from the scene record victims being carried from the devastation badly burned from head to toe. Rescue efforts were further hampered by fears that the terrorists were not yet through with September 11th. On more than one occasion, orders were given for people to pull back, away from the Pentagon, over reports that there was another hijacked jet headed for the area. The plane, United Airlines Flight 93, the only one left of the 4 airliners hijacked that day, is still airborne and headed directly for the nation's capital. Shortly before Flight 77 had crashed into the Pentagon, Flight 93 had changed course over Cleveland. 6 minutes after this course change, the transponder was turned off. The plane is on a direct course for Washington, D.C. Although the exact intentions of the hijackers will never be known, most likely they were planning to use Flight 93 as a 4th guided missile against another of America's high-profile targets. The hijackers had taken control of the aircraft, herding passengers and crew to the rear. Some of the passengers found opportunity to make phone calls to loved ones. Through these phone calls, they learn about the terrible events of that morning, and their own fate becomes clear. In every known phone call, the passengers tell their friends and family that they have decided to stop the terrorists. In the pure definition of heroism, these ordinary citizens risk their lives and their future to stop further killing. The passengers would have first rushed the terrorists in the cabin who were armed with knives in an attempt to overpower them. Next, they would have stormed the cockpit in order to regain control of the aircraft and take the powerful weapon out of the hands of suicidal terrorists. A cockpit microphone recorded the sounds of a struggle in the final moments of Flight 93. The sacrifice those passengers were willing to make that day would not go unclaimed. And at approximately 10 a.m., Flight 93 crashes at high speed into a remote field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, disintegrating into a large crater in the ground. Ultimately, the heroism of the brave passengers of Flight 93 will be rewarded by the memories of those on the ground whose lives were spared by their actions. Before 10 a.m., the Federal Aviation Administration had ordered all aircraft to land immediately and grounded all air traffic in the United States for the first time in history. Back in New York, all bridges and tunnels are closed to civilian motor traffic. The stock markets are closed and remain closed until the following week, the longest shutdown since World War I. Sporting events nationwide are canceled indefinitely. At the World Trade Center, rescue workers are arriving by the hundreds. Thousands are evacuated from the burning towers. While true to their creed, hundreds of firefighters and police officers rush into the buildings in order to help save as many lives as possible. According to available statistics, the facts are that of the more than 40,000 people in the towers at the time the first plane struck, 6,291 were wounded, and an additional 4,290 were missing and presumed dead, meaning that over 30,000 individuals escaped the towers Tuesday morning, thanks to the rescue efforts of the emergency crews who were at the scene. Numbered among the missing are many of New York's finest and bravest fire department and police department rescue workers. For example, Chief Ray Downey, the most decorated firefighter in the New York Fire Department, is listed among the missing at Ground Zero. He and other rescue workers put themselves in harm's way, risking and in many cases sacrificing their own lives to make sure that as many people as possible escaped the towers before the collapse. Many of the missing rescuers were last seen heading up the stairs of the World Trade Center towers and were described by friends and family as people who would not have stopped until they knew everyone was out of danger. It is said that every single firefighter in New York lost at least one close friend on September 11th. Suddenly, what had already become one of the darkest days in American history took a catastrophic turn. There were worries that the Twin Towers might have sustained enough serious structural damage to be alert for possible collapse. but most people worldwide watched in complete surprise, shock, and horror as the South Tower collapses at 10:05 a.m. Millions of people worldwide watched the collapse on live television. Those in the vicinity of the towers flee for their lives amid cascading concrete, glass, steel, smoke, and choking dust. The evacuation of the towers was reportedly calm and orderly for the most part until the collapse of the South Tower. People who were in the process of evacuating the North Tower reported that the situation deteriorated into complete bedlam, with people shoving and trampling as they urgently tried to escape.
Tower 2 has had a major explosion and what appears to be a complete collapse. We're across the street from the towers. This is Tower. We have people trapped in the building. We got an ambulance full of cops that we need help.
For 23 minutes, the skyline of New York City, filled with dust and smoke, seemed all the more surreal as the space once occupied by the Twin Towers now held only one scarred and burning single World Trade Center tower. The realization dawned on many that at any moment this North Tower, the first target hit that day, would inevitably suffer the same fate as her twin. At 10:28, that fear was realized when the North Tower finally gave way.
We got a 1013, we got a second tower down. Units, remove yourselves from the location. Iron Section first, remove yourselves from the location at this time. We got another tower collapse. Another tower collapse. Captain Fuentes, are you trapped? And 4. We still got parts by the shop. We need a hand out here on the west side of our.
So we were right up against the North Tower, which was going to collapse, and my officer said, guys, stay close to the building, stay close. I guess he saw signs it was coming down. So then he said, down, down, down. And there were civilians there. There was a woman there who had fell. I remember she was on her back. Very shortly, she was going to be buried. She was going to be gone. There was a police officer about 20 feet in front of us, and there was the creaking and rumbling, and she just vanished. She must have fell down into a hole or part of the collapse. She was gone. So I remember my officer saying, down, down. So we all leaned down, crouched down. I had my helmet. I lifted my coat up, and I looked up for a split second, and I saw the building coming down. And I said, I can't believe that, I'm gonna die like this. I just couldn't believe how I was gonna go out, how it was gonna end for me. We were there about 10 minutes when we started to realize, hey, wait, we're alive here. We can move. We have all our body parts and everything. But people were buried all around us. My officer said, guys, we have to go. Aside from even in the truth, I have about 5 guys I grew up with. I knew from high school. I knew from, playing basketball down at the schoolyard. It was good people. It was nice guys, and they're all gone. My captain at the house said the guys who were working that day are not allowed down there. He said he felt like, the trauma. He said that we have like the post-traumatic stress, and he knows we all have the signs. We're all upset. I have a loss of appetite, my sleeping. But a few days later, he dropped that, and he said, guys, you can go down there and work. And I wanted to go down. I wanted to look for my friend and for somebody else. Find somebody. Just find one person. That's all I wanted to do. No, I don't think there's anybody down there. Oh, it's over. Down there, it's all over. They're gone.
Dust, smoke, and debris again filled the air and cloaked lower Manhattan in total darkness. The day had gone from fear to terror to utter catastrophe. The world watched in stunned silence as rescue efforts continued around the clock in New York and Washington. By the end of the day on September 11th, over 18 large buildings had been damaged or destroyed. The amount of office space taken out of commission by the terrorist attacks was over 27.5 million square feet in Manhattan alone, enough to equal the total amount of office space in the entire central business district of Atlanta and Miami combined. The images of twisted steel and broken concrete are unlike anything America has ever known before. This small group of men, motivated by their religious and political ideals, had done what powerful empires, 2 world wars, and a civil war had failed to accomplish. They had mounted an attack against America on American soil and taken the lives of thousands of unsuspecting civilians in a surprise attack. They had struck two separate, powerfully symbolic structures that stood for American ideals and everything they hated about the United States of America, and been stopped just short of destroying at least one more target and countless other lives. These terrorists, who had in their own minds been at war with America for years, finally had the attention of the entire world. The human cost is staggering. 125 people dead at the Pentagon, 246 airline passengers and crew, and more than 4,200 individuals in New York City, over 400 of which were firefighters and police officers who died during rescue operations when the towers collapsed, all caused by the suicide mission of 19 hijackers. Like December 7, 1941, the day Pearl Harbor was attacked, September 11, 2001 will live in infamy in mankind's history. President George W. Bush, who had started the day in Florida, returned to Washington, D.C. to address the nation on Tuesday evening.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks.
Across America, people wonder if life will ever be normal again. These events force us all to reflect on how every life in America has been affected, and how from now on our view of what the future holds will never be the same. And although we may be less confident about the safety of our world from terrorists, we are also encouraged by the potential for heroism that lies in so many of us when the moment arises. The repercussions of the actions of 19 men and their terrorist acts will be felt for generations.